Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. Thank you for listening. We would like to remind you that this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Known as just a silly boy with a feely heart. Please consider supporting the show. Check us out on Patreon or simply leave a review on iTunes. Here's your host and creator of the show, Known Wells.
Hello, feely humans. Welcome to another episode of You, Me, Empathy. And by another episode, I of course mean episode 100. Woohoo! We did it, you guys. We did it. Less than 2 years ago, I started this podcast, You, Me, Empathy, with the hope of creating safe spaces for people like you. For people to share their stories, to engage in matters of the heart, to look inward and to be curious about our emotions, to show up for our fellow feely humans, to meet them where they are, to exchange hearts like Care Bears back to back, heart to heart. That's what I meant. And just be beautiful and do the things that we all have capacity for, which is be vulnerable and go on emotional journeys and grow emotionally and all that lovely stuff. I couldn't be prouder of this podcast, and I hope it continues to grow and serve you and serve the community of feely humans. And I just want to make the world a more feely place, and that's what this is for, and that's what my upcoming secret project is all about, and you'll be hearing about that very soon, so look out for that. Be tuned in for that. In this episode 100, it's all about Camp Heal. It's a Camp Heal extravaganza where I chat with friends Kaylie, Jacqueline, Laura, Arwen, Errin, and Eric. We talk about I get into each of their stories just a little bit about their eating disorder journeys. And we all share the life-changing experience that was Camp Heal, and it was just so beautiful. And we talk about that, and it's really lovely and wonderful. And I met so many amazing people at Camp Heal, and these are a few of them featured here on this episode 100 of You, Me, Empathy. There is a trigger warning for this episode. Obviously, we talk around disordered eating, anorexia, compulsive exercise, binge eating disorder, bulimia, and trauma. So just be aware of that. We don't get into too much detail about stuff, but there's conversation around eating disorders, which you should be aware of. Okay, before we get to the episode, though, I know this is a very long episode, so I'll try to keep this brief. But I did want to shout out a few new Apple Podcast reviews. You know, Feely Human, you can leave a review, and I will read it here in my intros. So I'm going to read a couple of them. This is from D. Selsey, DSELSSEY. The title of the review is "This podcast is the best!" 2 exclamation points. Yes, I love that. I really love the way Known normalizes all the feelings we experience as humans. This podcast is one I return to each week, knowing there will be authentic conversations and where I will end up feeling so inspired. Thank you, DeCelsey. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but thank you for that lovely and warm and authentic review. I appreciate you, and I love you. This review is from Brianna Pastor. Brianna is an upcoming guest on the podcast, so thank you, Brianna, for leaving this review. You, Me, Empathy is one of the safest spaces for both the listeners and the guests. I have to agree that it does keep the darkness of the topics lighthearted while bringing attention and love to the table. Each episode feels like you're sitting at a coffee table with someone you love, sipping coffee, discussing life, and walking away feeling like you understood life a little bit more than you did before you sat down. Give this a listen. Thank you, Brianna. That's so lovely, and I love the idea of this being just kind of friends sitting around a coffee table. It's that's kind of what it is. It's just just feely humans having a chat. So thank you for those new podcast reviews. If you want to leave a authentic and real and honest review of You Me Empathy, takes a minute. It helps out the show. Please do it. I would really love to see more reviews. That'd be great. So go to Apple Podcasts, search for You Me Empathy, and leave yourself a review. And thank you. Okay, let's get into this episode 100 extravaganza with my guests Kaylie, Jacqueline, Laura, Arwen, Errin, and Eric on the wonder and beauty that is Camp Heal.
La la la, you, me, empathy, yeah, la la la.
Welcome to You Me Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You Me Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. You Me Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today I am roasting mallows around a cozy campfire for a special Camp Heal episode of You Me Empathy. In this episode, I'll be gabbing with Kaylie, Jacqueline, Laura, Sierra, Arwen, Patricia, and Errin. It's going to be a long one, but it's very worth it. So let's start with Kaylie. Hello, Kaylie.
Hey, Noan, how are you?
I'm doing well. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to tell you all about how incredible camp was. As you know,
camp was incredible. It was my first camp experience.
I've never been camping either. So this was very different. I had never been to a part of California other than San Francisco, and I was only there for a couple days, and it was quite recently as well. So this was my first time sort of getting to take in the wilderness of California, and it was so beautiful.
It really was. And to be clear, I've been camping billions of times. I love camping, but to an actual like summer camp type of feel where, you know, teenagers are murdered in the movies from the 80s, that type of camp.
Correct. I've never been to either of those. So this was a first time experience for me.
Nice.
And it was just, I'm so speechless still when I try and articulate how I feel about the experience of camp.
Yeah. Well, I really want to get into that, but I first let's get into your story a little bit. Like I know, so you worked for Project Heal, and Project Heal puts on Camp Heal, or put on because it was the first year of Camp Heal. But I want to get a little bit of your story and your background before sort of coming on to working at Project Heal.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm currently 24. I'm almost 25 actually, which is a bit crazy to think about. But I'm 24 years old. I first came across Project Heal when I was about 21 or 22. And I had just finished up a inpatient stay at a hospital in New York City for my own eating disorder. And I was speaking with my therapist, who really encouraged me to try this peer support group. And I had never really been a fan of groups previously. I had been to many in a bunch of different treatment settings, and it just never felt like a super comfortable environment for me. But she suggested I go, and I ended up going to Communities of Healing, and that's how I first actually got involved with Project Heal. They were really instrumental in giving me a place to start building the foundation of my recovery, in the sense that that was really the first place I had ever seen a person in recovery and thriving and doing really well, not just trying and not being able to quite get there. And that was really huge for me to see that it was possible to sort of get to the other side of this. And I attended communities of healing for quite a bit of time. And then I trained with a Project Heal staffer to facilitate the Body Project, which is a group for high school aged females that are struggling with disordered eating and or body image. And it's a heavily evidence-based program as well. And so I did a training with her for that. And she mentioned she was looking for an intern. And so I applied and ended up getting the position. And I loved it so much that I asked to stay on for an extra semester. So I spent about 8 months as an intern, and I was working pretty closely with Arwen, who is one of our co-directors of Camp Heal. And we were working on some other unrelated things, and she mentioned this was a project she was working on, and I got involved pretty quickly, and we really started putting this together. And then we brought in Kaylie, who was already part of it. I guess she more so introduced me to Kaylie, and we all started really getting on the grind and planning this camp. And it was really fast and sort of set in. And I felt really honored that this was a project very close to Arwen's heart, and she was trusting me so much to help with it and bring some creativity and ideas to it. And so that's how I started becoming involved with Project Heal. And more so than anything, the reason why I became so involved is Project Heal felt like one of the first things I had stumbled upon in my young life that made me want to kind of get up in the morning and do better. And so every minute I was spending doing work with Project Heal, I felt for the first time in a long time really fulfilled, and like I was doing really meaningful work and work that I genuinely enjoyed and looked forward to doing and had actual pleasure doing. And so I have stuck by Project Heal for almost 2.5, 3 years now. And it's really quite incredible for me to realize that I was able to go from someone who was quite literally utilizing the resources that Project Heal offers to being a staffer with Project Heal as well, and putting on this beautiful event.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's amazing. And I commend your journey. That's quite a, that's quite a start, I think. And to go from, being in a place where you are feeling maybe alone and feeling like there's not much hope. And then I'm struck by the beauty of like finding your people, like I think there's so much power in community. Like I felt that when I was at Camp Heal, not having ever, I don't know if you know this, but not having ever, like I didn't go for my own anorexia. I wasn't in a treatment center. It was basically just kind of me and family members and friends kind of trying to help out. And I had never experienced others in recovery or recovered before. And I'd imagine, finding that early on in your recovery was huge.
Yeah. The thing that I tell everyone when I talk about my experience with Project Heal is that this was the first place that I was able to see living and breathing hope that like this could actually get better. Because as I went through, various levels of treatment for a solid 4 years, it was just kind of seeing people that were stuck just like me. And I felt like I wasn't seeing people around me that were showing me it was possible. And so when I walked into communities of healing, and, our single only group facilitator that we had was the first recovered person I had seen, I was so intrigued and I had so many questions, and I also trusted their insight about, what this journey was really like and that it could get better, because here there was someone showing me that it was actually possible, and seeing that for the first time, it kind of defied all odds for me.
Do you feel comfortable talking a little bit about and let me couch this just in my experience. Like when I was sort of in the throes of my anorexia and like it was such and of course I will put a trigger warning on this episode across the board, but it was, it's a very powerful feeling, right? Like people talk about that when they're in the sort of throes of their eating disorder. It's very empowering, and when for someone like me who felt very out of control, like it brought me some semblance of control, right? Obviously, it's very unhealthy and disordered and terrible. But can you talk a little bit about, or are you comfortable talking a little bit about it, like where you were at sort of mentally, emotionally, prior to finding help in these communities?
Yeah. So prior to finding Project Heal, as I had previously mentioned, was just wrapping up a 10-week inpatient stay in a hospital in New York. And so I felt really good when I left the hospital. I felt like something had finally clicked for me. I think I had finally just kind of wanted it. I wanted to get better, and I was really sick of what was happening to me because of my actions of being in control and yet not actually being in control. And so when I left the hospital, I was holding on to this idea that even if I didn't know what I wanted to recover for, like what I wanted to do with my life or what I wanted to go after, what I wanted my future to look like, I could hold on to this idea that I was going to do recovery anyway until I could find that thing. And so it was a really tough few months between discharging from the hospital and meeting Project Heal. I had a few people that were close to me pass away. And then I experienced something pretty horrific over the summer. And so I also had gotten salmonella, which is very interesting. You never hear anyone getting that, but I did. And I was pretty sick. God. And
well, first of all,
sort of pushed me.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm very sorry and just interject. Like my wife, Jessica, had salmonella once, and she, to this day, like, has it's almost like a PTSD. Like she had, like whenever she has a stomach ache, it's like she thinks about that time that she had salmonella. So, I'm sorry.
It was horrible. I was very sick, and I regressed a little bit back into my disorder just because of what kind of salmonella sort of does to your body and your digestive system. And so I was in a really tough spot as I started to feel better, knowing that I had to repair my body again, and then also get a little bit of that control back from the eating disorder voice in my mind, while actually not being inpatient anymore. Like I had to do this on an outpatient basis. Yeah. And then that's when I really started to get worried. And that's when my therapist had suggested looking at this Project Heal group as another sense of support, because I didn't understand how I was going to do this experience outpatient. And maybe this group would help me understand how I could get through what I was going through without having to go to a higher level of care. And so that's really where I had found myself before meeting Project Heal, and sort of had sworn off all kind of groups, just finding them triggering and really also invalidating and overwhelming. But that was kind of the opposite experience I had once I got to group.
That's so interesting, because you hear such wonders about group therapy and groups like that, but Can you give me some specifics as to like what you found in the Project Heal groups versus like what you found in the others? Like what made it so safe for you?
I think knowing that this wasn't therapy. So I just walked in knowing that I was going to be in a room with people who had shared and understood experience. And that was really the main difference between how I see Project Heal Group and an actual therapeutic group is there's no, it's, well, first of all, it's, sorry, there's a motorcycle outside. It's not therapy, which is incredible because the advice that's coming from your peers is from personal experience. And so there was also this feeling of not being judged and understanding that for me, I live in New York City, and understanding that I was in a room of 6 people who were also living in New York City and also at the same time trying to figure out how to do recovery while living a fast-paced life and trying to manage jobs and relationships. And that's what I liked so much about it is I felt like everyone really understood just exactly where I was. It's not like we were being analyzed by the group facilitator on whether they had to go talk to other members of our team about going to treatment. We were just kind of there to be like, hey, this really sucks. And you can share my experience in that. And also share what might have gotten you through that. And that's, I think, something really key in eating disorder therapy is I find that people who have not experienced eating disorders often won't be able to understand it as fully because they haven't actually gone through that experience. And so getting advice or being pointed in a different direction by someone who's literally experienced it and gone through it was that thing that really changed the game for me about group, because I felt like these people just got it. They were where I were, like they were me, like This is a community I belonged in.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, that's what empathy is, right? Like, you know, me experiencing the thing and you experiencing that thing, and I can relate to you, your experience and your struggles, and I can meet you where you are because I've been there before.
Yeah. And a lot of the time, I'm studying social work in school. And so we're taught that self-disclosure and talking about yourself as a clinician can be incredibly detrimental and harmful for the client that you're serving unless it's therapeutically necessary. And so Project Heal Group we have a trained facilitator, but they actually have no professional training at all to run a group. And so they don't have to worry about kind of holding back their experience. There's someone who has gone through the hard part and actually made it out the other side, and can be like, this is what worked for me and what I've seen work for other people. And this is my experience. And this is how I was feeling. And that element can be missing sometimes in an actual therapeutic group.
Yeah. No, that's so awesome. I love that. Can you give me, so like shifting gears to Camp Heal again, what were a couple of your highlights, and will there be Camp Heal version 2 next year?
If Arwen and I have anything to say about it, there will 150% be a Camp Heal Part 2.
Yay!
Yeah, we the second I left camp, I was like, I have 101 ideas for next year's camp already, and I haven't even left this year's.
Wow.
Just of like what I wanted to do to make it not even better, but just better somehow, or different or more special, if that's even possible. But I think there were a few really great highlights for me, and the first one was definitely when all of our campers got here off the bus, got to camp. I remember I was waiting with some of our volunteers to welcome them, help everyone get luggage out of the bus and onto the truck so we could get it up the hill. And that was really when it all kind of hit me that like this was happening and it was real and everyone was so excited. And I had a lot of friends that were coming to camp and some that I hadn't seen in quite a while because of hectic lives and busy schedules. And seeing everyone just kind of smiling and really excited to be there was heartwarming. And then another highlight that I had was our talent show. And we didn't get a bunch of footage from the talent show, but I was so struck and so blown away by every single person that got on that stage to perform. There was just so much talent. And I think for me, especially when I was sick in my eating disorder, I kind of forgot the things that made me happy or the things that I love to do. And a lot of people, when they got up to sing, were talking about how this is an experience for them that they hadn't had a lot of practice in since they started recovery because of damage or they've done to their voice or insecurities and things like that. And a really good friend of mine who came to camp, who I was able to convince to apply to come to camp, she did a monologue, and I actually started crying. I'm not much of a crier, but I did start crying when I was watching her perform because I was like, this is one of my beautiful best friends, and she has worked so hard for this, and I have seen her kind of transform and how the experience of performing was taken away from her at a point because of her illness. And now she was here and she was thriving and performing in front of all these people. And it was so striking. I even have goosebumps like now thinking about it.
I do too.
It was so heartwarming. And one of the best experiences of my life that I was able to see, definitely watching her perform. And then I would have to say one of the last highlights was closing ceremonies when we were missing some of our workshop leaders and other staff members, including you.
I know.
But it was a really beautiful moment. I actually started crying in front of like everyone that was there because I was so humbled and so grateful. And I kind of couldn't believe that the weekend had been wrapped up and that we had kind of done this. Like Arwen and Kaylie and me had really worked for over a year to get all the details of this camp as perfect as possible and make this such an incredible experience. And to see all of that kind of come to life was it. I'm still speechless, as I said, when I try and really articulate how magical it truly was. And that's, I think, the only word I can use to describe camp is magical. To be able to create a space like this where people were all coming with the mutual understanding that we've all been through stuff and we've all struggled with feeling at home in our bodies, and we're all here to self-care and enjoy and have fun and learn and grow together. And the experience of being able to provide that to a community of people is something that I don't take lightly, and I will definitely carry with me for a really long time.
It's so special, and I will just sort of reiterate whatever all of you said. Everything you said, I agree with, and the talent show was incredible. And for me, the experience of Camp Heal was one of the more beautiful experiences of my life. I mean, and there's no hyperbole there. I truly mean that. And so I just wanted to thank you, Kaylie, for making it possible for me and others to kind of come and be a part of this and connect with each other and be the mirrors for each other and relate to each other. Like, it was just such a wonderfully healing and beautiful space. And I hope, fingers crossed, that there will be one again next year.
Yeah. And we honestly have to give as much thanks to all of our counselors, workshop leaders, including you, and our campers as well, because we wouldn't have been able to do this if people weren't willing to show up and be vulnerable and learn and grow as a community. And I'm so grateful that we were able to give this space to people. And I definitely think there will be another Camp Heal coming up for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm, of course I'm signed up already. Where, Kaylie, let's start wrapping it up. Where can, if you want, where can people connect with you online? I guess plug Project Heal, those sorts of things.
Yeah. So Project Heal, we have our website. It's www.theprojectheal.org. And then our Instagram is at Project Heal. And my personal Instagram is I am Kaylie. So there's 2 I's, and then AMKAYLIE is my Instagram. And I post sometimes just about things that I think other people might relate to, and also really powerful posts that I see from other people and things that I think will lift other people up or make people laugh. And yeah, Project Heal posts a lot of things that are happening on our social media and updates and announcements. So that is definitely the place to stay updated, especially for an announcement for Camp Heal Part 2.
Woo woo.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you so much, Noan. And it was so great to speak with you. And I can't wait to stay connected.
Yeah, please, like I said, please keep me posted. I love Project Heal, and I want to continue to be a part of it in whatever way I can.
Yeah, for sure. And we will, of course, stay in touch and stay connected. And I am very confident that we will be able to do a Camp Heal Part 2. Very confident.
Well, let me know if you need any I know you said you have a million ideas, but if you need any more ideas, I'm here.
Oh my gosh, please write them down and let me know. And when we start planning, I will loop you in, and
okay.
We can. Arwen was write them all down, because I started telling her 6 at once, and she was like, I can't remember these, Kaylie. And I was like, all right, but I'm really excited.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. You too. And we should talk soon. And then please let me know when this comes out, because I'm excited to listen to it.
I will do that. Yeah, it'll be. This is episode 1. This will be episode. This is episode 100. So in a few weeks, actually.
Yay! Amazing. Okay, have a great rest of your weekend, and we will talk soon.
All right, sounds good.
All right, bye.
Bye. Feely Humans, this is the second installment of this episode, all about Camp Heal, and I am with Jackie. Hello, Jackie.
Hey, Don. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, good to hear. So, for the listeners, Jackie was one of the workshop leaders, just as I was a workshop leader at Camp Heal. I didn't get a chance to take your workshop because ours were at the same time.
They were.
So let's get into your background a little bit. What kind of led you to the world of Project Heal and sort of got you to Camp Heal? Can you tell a little bit about your sort of experience with mental health and maybe eating disorders?
Definitely. So I actually met Christina Saffron and Leanna Roseman, the founders of Project Heal, while I was in treatment for my eating disorder. That was 2011. So, Project Heal was just a couple years old at that point, and they were going around just sharing some information. And I always tell this story that Christina came to talk to my specific group there in treatment, and I had such an intense reaction. here's this girl talking about her life and saying that she's living in recovery. And I was so angry. I saw her, this girl, we're the same age, and she's talking about life and recovery. And I'm just thinking, like, who set her up to this? This cannot be true. Surely she's just making this up. The therapist wants us to hear this.
So it was like you didn't believe her.
Yeah, no, not at all. I thought that what she was saying just sounded impossible. And that was really it for a little while. That was my experience with Project Teal, kind of heard someone come, share their story and leave. And I thought, like, okay, well, that wasn't real, but moving on. And then probably like 8 months later, I'd finished treatment. I was started back in my transferred universities and ended up at the University of Miami. When my cousin actually reached out to me saying that she had been talking to them, Leanna and Christina, and wanted to start a chapter. And I, for some reason, despite my experience, it sounded like a really good idea in the moment. I think that just with a little bit more time and space and healing of my own, kind of, being able to think back and think like, oh, maybe recovery is possible. Let me try.
Yeah.
For like I said, whatever reason, I just decided to hop on board, and I got to say it was a really good decision for me. And it was really only at Camp Heal where I had the opportunity to look back now on all these years of friendship with Christina and Leanna, and seeing the organization grow so much in so many different ways. I was really able to see the impact that it had on me. More than anything, having that accountability and to myself and to the people I was sharing kind of the messages of Project Heal with, and also to have a community of people who were doing the same work and, kind of going for the same, excuse me.
That's all right.
Same goal, that, this idea that recovery is possible.
Yeah.
Made all the difference.
Yeah, so it's so beautiful, and Kaylie kind of mirrored a little bit of what you said before, in terms of just the power of community, which is something that I never had. Like I didn't go to any sort of treatment facility. I hadn't seen groups or anything of that sort, and this sort of Camp Heals and Project Heal, at large, was kind of like my first experience with other people in that space, and it's very powerful.
Yeah, wow, I didn't know that. That must have felt really powerful and different.
Yeah, it was. So when you were in treatment, can you tell me about your treatment experience a little bit, and sort of what brought you there specifically?
Yeah, definitely. I'd been struggling with my eating disorder for a long time at that point. Long time for having been 19 years old. And it had just really, like, when I went to college, it just kind of took a life of its own. And I just got to a point where I was really not able to function. I think just from years of perfectionism and pushing myself in school, in movement, and really everything that a person could push themselves in.
Yeah.
I burnt out, and I hit a point where I took a medical leave from school at sort of everyone around me's request, and kind of really thankful that I did have just this little bit of self-preservation in me, this little sliver of like, okay, maybe I should do something about this, or listen to what people are telling me. I'm really thankful for that little tiny voice, because it's really quiet in the face of this really loud eating disorder voice, right? That's saying like, oh, you're not sick, you don't need help, this isn't real, keep on going. So
that's a powerful image.
Yeah, it's definitely like I like kind of looking at it that way, that there are these two kind of voices, and they are, kind of battling with each other. It's this like internal dysfunction in a relationship. I think that Carolyn Costin does a really good job of talking about that with the eating disorder self and the healthy self, is the way that she frames it.
Right. So you'd mentioned that you sort of had this sort of drive, this, perfectionism, this sort of like wanting to do all the things and do them all sort of very well. And that's something that Carolyn mentioned in one of her talks at Camp Heal. Was she kind of went around the room and said, hey, we're all sort of perfectionists here. That was kind of what she was intimating. And I felt that was very interesting because I don't consider myself a perfectionist myself. Do you consider yourself someone who struggles with perfectionism?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, and not to speak on Carolyn's behalf, but I have kind of worked in her centers and had thankfully an opportunity to train a little bit under her. And I think that's something that she talks about, is sort of like we all have these traits that are, channeled into an eating disorder. So whatever, your poison is, whether it is perfectionism, whether it's a struggle with impulsivity. She talks a lot about reframing all of those things and taking it into the light. So, if you're really rigid, like what does that mean? Like, are you going to channel that into being, creating some really cool business or something? Or if you're impulsive, are you an adventure seeker? I know I've heard her like talk about kind of other traits being turned into like like maybe like this like over self-soothing that sometimes you see in eating disorders. What does that look like, giving love to others?
Yeah.
So,
I love that. I admittedly, of course, I knew about Carolyn Costin, but didn't have much interaction with her. Haven't sort of read anything about her other than knowing that she, founded Montanito and the Institute and whatnot. But I think I like this idea of reframing. I think hearing you say that, I guess for me, I do have maybe the impulsivity part. Like I have a tendency to be a bit cavalier or fatalistic in how I perceive the world, and it could be problematic. So rechanneling that and sort of reconfiguring that to serve me and serve others is how I can sort of learn and grow. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's like you're hitting the nail on the head. It is how we learn and grow. Because those parts of us aren't necessarily going to die. And, I don't think that really the goal in recovery should be, to lobotomize that part of your personality.
Yeah.
It's more just like, how else can this serve you? And, what else can it make besides an eating disorder?
Right. So for you, Jackie, what have you reframed in your own recovery and have found sort of working for you now?
Couple of things. Definitely kind of like I said, that kind of drive for perfectionism. And I think what I really am the most interested in now is I struggled with compulsive and overexercise, just sort of really beating up my body, beyond sort of with food or, however, like all the ways that I abused like food with or without it. Exercise was definitely an issue for me. So, and really it was, I had an experience where, I had treatment providers tell me like, to heal, you can't exercise anymore. You can't, be an athlete. You can't, that you're never going to go back to a high intensity training regimen. And that was really hard because again, that's like, taking away something that, was misused in my eating disorder, but wasn't all bad. And really kind of I've been able to channel that in a different way. And I first got back into movement after being completely terrified to move, right? Like, I finally reached a point in treatment where I was like, okay, like I want this, I want to recover. And if that meant not exercising, like, okay, like I just thought my life would be sort of sad because I was going to miss it. But, I sort of said, okay, let me try. And I was afraid to even walk around the block. Like I thought that like putting on my sneakers was going to be a full relapse.
Yeah.
And I had always really disliked yoga a lot for the, kind of more like really it was for me, it was Shavasana at the end when you're lying down. That was death for me. Like, what is the point of this? How could this possibly help?
Is it because I like yoga, but it's taken me some time to get there. And I think it's at that time, maybe a bristling against like the vulnerability of yoga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that definitely it's it's like a stopping and listening to what's actually going on, which, that's ultimately when I did have a friend that was able to kind of get me into it. And that got me back into the movement world little by little, very little by little. And yeah, it was, I'd never realized really, like it occurred to me one day that I never felt my body when I moved. I ran, I pounded into the ground. But I never checked in and thought, like, how does this feel? And I don't know if anybody had ever asked me that. I definitely never asked myself that.
Yeah.
So I think that it's just sort of, the eating disorder really is this way to dissociate from, I think, our physical form. Like how can I numb it out? How can I, pretend that I'm not in this body?
Yeah.
So yeah, yoga is sort of like lighting yourself on fire if you have an eating disorder. It's like, how does your body really feel?
Well, I mean, I think it's so beautiful. Like, of course, like we have to be in our bodies to like fully know them and sort of explore them and be curious. And it's so great that you've gone from the over-exercise, which I related to. I definitely did a lot of that in my experience, to this place where now you're teaching yoga and you're sort of being present and there for people, and it's powerful, right? It's like a powerful self-actualized feeling, I bet.
Yeah, definitely. It's sometimes I guess it's one of those things that really you can only look back on with time and be like, wow, how far we've come. But yeah, it was really powerful to be able to share Budokan Yoga in particular at Camp Heal. I was really thankful for that experience.
So tell me a little bit about what Budokan Yoga is.
Yeah, for sure. Budokan Yoga is, Budokan is a mixed movement arts form. So full Budokan practice looks like yoga with mobility and calisthenics training in all conditioning for jujitsu and striking martial arts training. So that is sort of like a full picture of a Budokan athlete. And what I really appreciate about it is sort of just the more like the kind of like bigger life application, like the lifestyle practice there. And it's like, okay, why do all of these things? Why not just be a martial artist? Why not just be a yogi or, a bar star on calisthenics? And, of course, like you can maybe see from some Budokan athletes out there, like how incredible of a mover combining all those things can make you. But I think what's really powerful for me is, why that's important is the way that it makes you think, the way that maybe you approach, like how do you take that outside of the gym and apply that to your life? Like, can you be, both the warrior and the peacemaker? And how is that different? This is something I talked about in my workshop. Like, how is the warrior different from the fighter? Which for me is, kind of the essence of at least my recovery. I think when I stopped kind of drawing that line between the warrior and the fighter. Like, the fighters as an archetype is somebody who lives for the fight itself. And I think that really was the essence of my eating disorder. I was just constantly fighting myself, really more than anyone. But shifting into the warrior, I think that the warrior kind of hopes to not have to fight, but is, ready for that battle nonetheless.
Yeah.
And that was really what I, more so than the movement, it was sort of like that character study was what I was hoping people took away from my workshop.
That's amazing. I love that so much, and I wish I could have been there. Can you give me a couple of highlights? I mean, maybe outside of your leading your workshop of Camp Heal?
Yeah, definitely. I think one, just reconnecting with old friends, old mentors, Carolyn, Christina, Arwen, meeting new people, you, Kaylie, who we, have this shared love of martial arts. That was really cool. And yeah, just really seeing how this community, because, that is really what it is. What Project Heal is for me now is community, and of people who are looking at recovery a little bit differently, and definitely open-mindedly. There is just so many cool things going on that really resonate. And I think that we need all these different people to explore different facets of recovery in, the space that traditionally, you'd asked me a little bit about my treatment experience before. I think that my treatment experience was different than how the way that it was framed to me, kind of classically, and I think that the way historically it's been framed is that people with eating disorders shouldn't really be friends, that they're not for each other. And,
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It was kind of, I definitely heard it spoken, but I think more than anything, it was, the underlying message of, and I see where it comes from, of course, from fear of clinicians. And of course, two people in their eating disorder can be bad for each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had negative relationships in my eating disorder, even with other family members who had eating disorders. But really, I think that just as negative and just as kind of destructive as relationships can be, they can be equally constructive and positive. And building Project Heal with one of really, so this day is my best friends, who I met in treatment, was really that kind of, showed me that wasn't true. We were both constantly going through our processes, and they weren't perfect. We weren't recovered at that point. Started Project Heal. We were recovering. It was very much a verb.
Yeah.
And that came with its ups and downs. But I think through that all, we were able to respect each other's journeys and, see that we were both together in it and working on our own, long-term healing.
I love that. I think it's a great look at how meaningful connection can be, if they're the right sort of safe spaces for people. And I personally believe that we do need people, and and we do need to be open. We do need to have an open heart to different ideas, like you said. I think there's so much that goes on in the world that's like this legacy ideas, right? That just stay because they are how it was done before. And I think that can be damaging and limiting. And I think if we have open hearts and minds and are creating safe spaces for people to explore new ways of thinking and of healing and of recovering, like that is the future that I want.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's, how we evolve. And I think that that's what we want to see, once eating disorders were a death sentence.
Yeah.
Not only because you couldn't access treatment for insurance, but because, we just didn't think that we could heal from them. And like, look at all these people that we know who are very much alive and well.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's I'm so grateful to like be connected to Project Heal now. It does really feel like my people.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy you were there. I'm so happy that we met.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
So, Jackie, where can people connect with you? And if you're in the Miami, Florida area, maybe you can take one of Jackie's yoga classes. So where can people find you, and then where can people find you online?
Yeah, definitely. Yoga sort of moving all over the place. Right now, I'm just teaching workshops and at the University of Miami gym because I just started a master's in mental health counseling there. So
wow, congrats!
Thank you. Yeah, I scaled back a little bit on my teaching so that I could focus on school for a little bit. But I'm still teaching Budokan yoga there. And online, you can find me mostly on Instagram. My Instagram is Jackie, JACQUIE .RANGEL. Jackie Rangel.
Great. Well, thank you for being a part of this special Camp Heal episode of You Me Empathy, Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to connect.
Of course. Let's stay connected.
Yes, please.
So I have Laura Burns here. This is another segment for the Camp Heal episode 100 celebration of You Me Empathy. Hello, Laura.
Hi, I'm doing jazz hands. You can't see.
I am doing jazz feet. So there you go. We're decked out in jazz. So how are you?
I'm doing really good today.
That's good.
I don't know. I'm just feeling great. It's very sunny.
Okay, so whereabouts do you live?
I live in Houston, Texas.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, it's sunny here as well. I live in Southern California. It's often sunny. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Very excited to chat with you, get to know you a bit. We'll get into your story in a second, but I wanted to just make the listeners know I took your one of your workshops at Camp Heal. I took your yoga class, which was amazing. I loved it.
Yay, I'm so glad.
You know, I don't do a lot of yoga, and it felt, the whole weekend felt like a big warm bear hug, but your workshop especially felt very sort of inclusive and safe and lovely. So.
Oh, good. Well, that is exactly what I was going for, so I'm really happy to hear that.
Good. Well, why don't you, Laura, tell the listeners a little bit about your I guess maybe a couple of seminal moments in your mental health history, if you want to share.
Whew. Sure.
I know that's a big question, but
there's so many. Well, hello everyone. I have as many of us do, a long and tumultuous history with mental health. So from a young age, I've struggled with anxiety and depression. And also binge eating disorder, although I didn't know that then. I just thought that I had no control, or that I was an emotional eater, but turns out that's not actually true. So mental health has been really impactful and important for me. But until I was really an adult, I didn't have the language I didn't understand what was happening, and I didn't have the language to discuss it. And so for me, I spent a lot of my life like really just frustrated and angry. And so what's really interesting is that there are a lot of people in the world who maybe, from like junior high and high school years, when they think of me, they think of somebody who's like really kind of aggressive and angry. But it turns out that's not actually who I really am. And so I think that really shaped my perception of the importance of mental health. So being able to figure out, here are tools for me to understand what's going on in my body and my brain. And here are resources to help me, translate them and learn to really figure out who I am and what kind of person I am. Like just trying to kind of very quickly, wrap up like my younger story. Like, I think that does a pretty good job. Like, I wasn't really connected to myself in an authentic way.
Yeah. I think many of us can relate to that. I mean, I certainly do. I think growing up with depression, not knowing I had depression, I think it sometimes manifests as like anger and frustration and these things that, again, we just don't have the language for. Like, my hope is the future, and I imagine your future hope is this too, like where kids, maybe learn a bit of that language, even if they maybe don't have the emotional intelligence yet, they're at least sort of learning some skills to identify with mental health disorders, mental health conditions, feelings, those sorts of things.
For sure. I think that's definitely happening. Like, I see that in my nieces and nephew, who are, very young children at this point. They already have a better grasp of their emotional state and their emotional needs than I did when I was a teenager. So I'm heartened for the future. Good.
So at what age did you start kind of learning about, I have depression, or learning about these tools?
Yeah. So in high school, I kind of was like, I had like heard of depression by that point. I'd kind of heard of anxiety, but not really. It was still like really stigmatized. And so was depression. But I was like a weirdo. My group of friends were like the weirdos. So it was actually like kind of cool to be depressed. So that actually was really helpful to me in that my friends didn't really have that stigma about depression. And so I could talk to people. And so like being a weirdo actually helped me. And it made me feel more comfortable to actually say, hey, like I, have like these really intense mood shifts and I can get really, really down. And I've thought about, like really dark things and actually saying that to people. And I've been a writer my whole life. So like I wrote a lot of like angsty poetry when I was depressed.
Sure. Everyone goes through the angsty poetry phase.
Oh yeah. I still have a journal from high school and it is gold, I tell you.
I love that you had this weirdo group. Like what type of weirdo are we talking about?
Oh, just like creative, like
artistic, sort of like
unique, artistic, unusual kind of people. Yeah. And I was at a school that was for nerds, basically. And I just never felt like I really had my place until I kind of found this group. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, look, I can have friends that I don't worry about them judging me for talking about like depression or, maybe starting to open up about like my weird feelings about food and body image, which I had never at that point talked to anyone about. So it was really, a special group of people. And I still am in contact with a lot of them, which is crazy because it's about to be my 20-year high school reunion.
Yeah. I had that. What year did I graduate high school? 2000, I think.
Oh, yeah. Same for me.
Same. Yeah. We're the same age. Yeah. I'm so happy to hear that you had that group of friends that you could be open to, because that oftentimes high school can be just the worst. I mean, it was real hard for me at times, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I am an Asian woman, and I'm mixed. So I'm half Japanese and half Scottish. And I live in Houston, which is a really diverse city. There's a lot of all kinds of people here, which is amazing. But I have really struggled my whole life and still continue to have issues with some people, with people having their own idea of like what my identity is. And so especially like in high school, I went to 3 different high schools, and at each one I ran into the problem of the Asian kids not thinking I was Asian enough. And the white kids like treating me like I wasn't white. And so there was nowhere that felt safe, like identity wise. And this is something that still like comes up for me. People are always trying to project onto me what they think I should identify as.
Why do you think that happens?
I don't know.
I mean, I feel for you. That's got to be so difficult. I'm I talk about identity a lot on this show, and the thing about identity is while it is valuable, right? Like we take pride in our identities. Like I take pride in the fact that like I recovered from anorexia, and that's like sort of a point of identity, right? But also, I think we take those things too far, like the identity piece. Like, you know what I mean? Like as you pointed out, like people, strangers or whoever, take points of identity and then try to use those as ways of connecting or just defining when they shouldn't be, or just putting people into boxes when they shouldn't be. I think
it's just touchy. A lazy way of trying to figure someone out.
Yes.
And so instead of like actually trying to get to know someone, they just decide, oh, this is who I think you are.
Yeah, it needs to start at the heart.
Yeah, and it's, a really complex issue, and I mean, we could spend an entire episode talking about that. But it was something that at that point, that same group of like weirdo friends, like they really were a safe place for me, where I could feel like I could be who I was and say that I, was an Asian person and not feel like somebody was going to go, no, you're not, you're half white, which had always been a response up until that point. And it felt like really terrible.
That's super shitty.
Yeah. And it continues to be shitty to this day. It happened this week. So,
don't do that, listeners. I know my listeners, you guys are all lovely, feely humans, but if you witness someone doing that, just politely tell them that that's rude and shouldn't happen, because no one should do that to anyone. That's not our jobs.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, who cares? Unless it's relevant to the conversation and I like bring it up, like, why are we even talking about it? It's like
100%.
All right.
Yeah.
Move along.
Yeah. So you had this experience in high school. You had this group of people who felt safe to you. And through that experience, you start sharing about your mental health. And then where does the sort of binge eating come into play?
Right. Well, it was always happening.
Okay.
So I started binge eating as a child. So I dealt with some sexual abuse as a child. And because of that, around that time, I started binge eating. And also as a child, I was, at the same time that I kind of started binge eating, I started gaining weight. And so then I was put on diets and I was taken to Weight Watchers, and like that's like the beginning of diet culture in my life. And so around that time, it was a lot about my body and my size and food. And so it started, elementary school, so from a young age. And so by the time I met that nice group of people in high school, I had been, engaging in disordered eating for quite a long time. It was ingrained in my life at that point. But that was the first time that I ever, and not that I had a name for it, but that was the first time that I ever like even opened up to anyone about the fact that I felt like the way that I ate was weird because it wasn't the same way that other people eat. To which I got, we eat out all the time. And I always see you don't eat that much. I'm like, yeah, you don't see when I binge. I'm not going to binge around you.
Yeah.
And that kind of started conversations with my friends. Like they realized, this is behavior that you do alone and in secret. And so being able to talk to them about it was like kind of the first time that like a little light was shown on the behavior. And it both was embarrassing to talk about, but also kind of relieved me of some of the shame of that secret eating.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say I'm deeply sorry that you experienced that abuse. No human needs to go through something like that. So very sorry for that.
Thanks.
And second, I just wanted to say so I wanted to relate a little bit, or maybe just, I'm thinking as you say like you sharing it sort of reduces the stigma a little bit, or just kind of sheds some light on it and allows you to kind of take a breather. Like that's such a beautiful moment. I think sometimes we as humans forget or just kind of rush past when we can kind of share, and it allows us to kind of own it a little bit with others, like, and it's not really owned by them, but it's a little bit, it's like, it's trying to create a path for empathy.
Yeah. And it's like another connection point in your relationship with that person.
Yeah.
I speak about this a lot. I talk about my eating disorder. I talk about the childhood sexual abuse. I talk about poor decision making that I have done in the past. That was a direct result of my depression and anxiety and eating disorder. It's not easy to be so open and honest and vulnerable and share about these things, but I literally think of it as like my job because every time that somebody shares about this, every time I talk about it, like maybe there's somebody who feels a little bit more confident to share their own story or experiences, or even just hearing that like somebody else did the same thing or thought the same thing. Because I went so much of my life never hearing that from anyone and thinking that the stuff that I was doing and saying and eating, it was just me. And it was so shameful because I thought nobody else acts like this. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
But to know that lots of other people are doing those same things or thinking those same things, it just makes you feel more connected and not so like weird or alone.
Yeah. No, I think that's one of the most beautiful gifts you can give to humanity. So kudos to you, Laura. That's amazing. I love it.
Thanks.
So where are you at now with the binge eating?
Sure. Well, actually, before I jump into that, I want to kind of talk about what happened between then and now.
Yeah, you bet.
Because that is, I think, probably the most important part of my story and is what drives what I'm doing now. So, in high school, like towards the end of high school, because I had found a little bit of support, and not that they knew anything about those things, but they were just kind and loving people, I felt empowered to go and try to seek help. Because I realized that what I was doing was not good for me. It didn't feel good, like it wasn't helping anything. And so I, here in Houston, tried to access eating disorder inpatient. I tried to talk about like outpatient. I tried to go to like group, just like, support groups, not connected, like at a community center. And at each place, I was told that I wasn't sick, that I didn't have an eating disorder, that I just needed to go on a diet, that they couldn't help me. At a support group that I tried to go to, I walked in and it was all, kind of the stereotype, what you would expect. It was very thin, young, very rich looking white girls.
Yeah.
And one of them literally said, "What are you doing here?"
Wow.
And little teenage Laura Burns was, and I still am, but less so now, very sensitive. And especially in that moment, this kind of like first attempt at reaching out and connecting and getting help, to be treated like that and to be kind of brushed away and just told that I needed to go on a diet. It was really traumatic.
Yeah.
Like even just thinking about it now, like I'm like tearing up. I'm remembering how it felt just to stand there. It was awful. And so I was like, well, this is clearly not for me. And then I didn't attempt to get any kind of help for a really long time. And
wow.
like I just like continued engaging in my eating disorder and not trying to help myself and just like, well, this is who I am. This is how I am. And this is how I'm going to be. And then I had moved away to Baltimore, which is a crazy whole other story. But while I was there, I really fell into probably the worst depression period of my life. And I was just really unhappy. And I basically, like between food and work and dating and friendships, like just everything was going poorly. And I just like, I didn't want to be here anymore. And I had a few like really dark days. And I basically just told myself, I need to make a decision. Like I'm either going to be here and live life or I'm not going to be here anymore. And I clearly chose to be here. And from there, I wanted help for which I now understood to be an eating disorder, like a real one. but I didn't want to reach out again because of how badly it had gone. So I just kind of bootstrapped it
Yeah.
and figured out my own like recovery protocol, which is nuts to think about. But I just was so traumatized by that past experience. So long story short, I made up my own program and it was really, really hard. And I now know, and I can talk more about this later when we talk about camp, but now just like realizing the resources that are available now, like it was so much harder than it needed to have been.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to like, send some empathy your way. Cause there's so much, like my heart breaks for you. And I teared up a little bit when you were talking about that. Cause I experienced the same thing, having, opening up, when I was really sick and being met with, why don't you just go eat a sandwich?
Oh.
Like that type of like deep invalidation can be so traumatizing for someone who's like, for the first time, taking this on their shoulders and looking at it and saying, I need to do this, and I'm addressing it, and I'm putting myself out there. And it's just like, that's so heartbreaking. And then you going through this experience alone and doing it on your own, like what strength. And I'm not saying I was as strong, there's no comparison here, but I also didn't seek any inpatient or outpatient program. I sort of did it on my own.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was because of a few of those invalidating experiences or not, but all to say that
certainly didn't help.
It didn't help, and we need to meet people where they are and see them and see their hearts. Like that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to think that if, I walked into a treatment facility or called or whatever, now in 2019, I would get a very different reception.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
so that's good.
It has progressed.
Change is happening. It sucks for me, but I made it.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm doing well. So that brings me to how I'm doing with my recovery. And I'm doing like really well. I think now because I talk to people about it, and I, am like always thinking about body liberation and diet culture, because I like really understand diet culture now and see it as the like capitalist sham that it is.
Yeah.
It's really helpful. I have the tools now. I have made the resources available to myself. And so I'm not consumed with food, with with negative thoughts about my body. Like I'm just in such a better place now. It's amazing. Like if I had known, I mean, I did it anyway, but if I had known like how good I could feel, it would have been like really helpful and motivating, instead of like, as I was slogging through going, well, maybe one day it'll be better.
I know hindsight is always 20/20, and thankfully things are progressing, I think about that sometimes. I was just like, God, I'm 38 now. It's just like, gosh, I wish I was like 18 now. And then I can, but
knowing what you know now,
knowing what I know now, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really good to hear that you're doing well in your recovery, and tell me and the listeners a bit about like the work you do on this front, and the work you did at Camp Heal and your experience there.
Sure. So I currently work as a yoga teacher and a body liberation coach. I do in-person classes for yoga. I do privates. I do online workshops that combine yoga and body liberation work. And so, what I didn't say before is that I always credit yoga and fat liberation or body liberation as saving my life. And so those two things really in cooperation with eating disorder recovery are what saved my life. And so that's what I'm now trying to pump out into the world. I'm basically just trying to like create the resources that I didn't have available to me. And so through this, joyful movement and being present in your body, and then working on through various ways, kind of the emotional piece of that. I'm just trying to put out ways for people to engage and to discover all these things about themselves that I had to discover as well. And so at Camp Heal, so they brought me in to teach multiple yoga classes and then also a guided meditation. And so I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Because I had previously met the Project Heal crew when I was they brought me to LA in May to be on a panel discussion at the We Rise LA event, which is a mental health awareness event.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so that's how I got hooked up with them, and it went really well. So they brought me in for Camp Heal, and to be honest, I didn't know what to expect because, as I said, not being plugged into the recovery community.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I had my assumptions about, what it would be like and who would be there, and that's not amazing, but it is. It's what I was thinking. And so when I came, I was so pleasantly surprised to see a range of ages and body sizes. I was just really excited to be in that kind of space. And so I want to tell you this little story this is the thing that I've been telling people about camp. Mm-hmm. And it was really special to me. So I went to camp for work. But I got so much out of it. It was amazing. You described it as one giant hug.
Yeah.
And that I really feel like that is true, and like I said, I went in with these assumptions, but when I was there, I was really blown away by the openness and kindness and community spirit. And so on Saturday after lunch, I attended the guided meditation with Shanta Valdez, which was, by the way, amazing. And before the meditation, she said, would anyone like to share about how they're feeling right now? And I was in a fine mood, I was it's beautiful and I just ate. So I'm really comfortable and I've got my fleece on, whatever. I wasn't having an especially emotional experience. And then people started sharing about how they were feeling. And all of a sudden I was overcome with emotion. I started crying. And so I said, I think I need to share how I'm feeling because I just started crying, and they were like, go for it. And so as I was talking, I didn't even know what I was going to say, but as I was talking, it just came out, and I realized that it was the first time I had ever been in community with other people in recovery from eating disorders and felt safe and seen and loved and supported. And I was crying, and I was saying this, and it was not a cute cry. It was an ugly cry. And I was just super overcome with how amazing it felt to be in that moment, because I had literally never experienced that before. And just how grateful I was to be there. I feel like the universe brought Project Heal into my life because I was supposed to be there that weekend to experience that. It really has been a game changer for me, because now being around other people with binge eating disorder, I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to justify anything, it's they were just yeah, that's a real thing. We believe you. It was really huge for me. And it made me realize that just because I did it by myself and I am in a really good place, it doesn't mean I can't access resources now.
Yeah.
For ongoing support. And it's that seems so simple, but I literally had not realized that. So it was amazing.
I'm so grateful to hear that. And what a beautiful moment that is. I mean, I will just say that I felt the same way. I had never been around other people in recovery or who have recovered from eating disorder. And being around those people, I just felt oh, okay, this is what life should feel like, connecting and seeing each other and just love and respect. And my dog's making lots of noise in the background. It was just such a beautiful experience for me too, and I'm so grateful that you had that experience too.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful that we all had that experience. What a magical weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It's it didn't matter what age you were, or, what kind of eating disorder you had. People were just really open and kind. Like, for example, before the ending campfire, when we all burned our cards with like what we were letting go of and what we were bringing in, I ran to the bathroom and I was like, okay, I'll just walk down by myself. It's no big deal. And I came out of the bathroom and there was this group of girls and they had waited for me and they didn't really know me.
Mm.
And they were like, we didn't want you to walk down by yourself. And I like literally teared up. I was like, oh my God, that's so nice. Oh my gosh, just like little things like that. It was so kind. They didn't know me. They were much younger than me. I don't know. It was just really sweet and very touching to me. And like, I think especially because those girls looked exactly like the girls who were like, why are you here?
Sure. Yeah. 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 That's so great to hear. I'm so glad you had a good time. I'm hoping that Camp Heal round 2 happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Laura, where can my listeners read your writing, learn about you, connect with you online, all that stuff?
Yeah. So I have a website. It's just radicalbodylove.com. And that there's information about me there. But really the place where I'm most active is Instagram. And so on there, I'm just at Radical Body Love. So pretty easy to remember.
Yeah. You procured some great handles there. Radical Body Love. That's perfect.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's exactly right for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit. And I think I want to have you back for like a full episode if you're open to it.
Yeah, I would love that.
Awesome. Well, cool. That's it then. All right.
Cool. Well, thanks for inviting me to do this.
Oh, well, thanks for being a part of it. I really appreciate it. And I'll make sure to share links and things when the episode comes out.
Awesome. I'll do the same.
Cool.
All
right. Bye, Laura.
Bye.
All right. I have another Camp Heal friend here today. It's Arwen. Hello, Arwen.
Hello, Noon. How are you?
I am feeling a little tired today. I haven't been sleeping very well, but I am so jazzed to be here with you this morning.
I'm excited, too. This is my first podcast, so baby's first podcast.
Yay! I'm so glad to be on this journey with you, your first podcast journey. I will be your trusty pilot.
My podcast spirit guide.
Spirit guide. That's better.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah. A unicorn. I'm a unicorn spirit guide. Well, thanks for being here. This episode, listeners, as you know, it's full of these wonderful conversations with friends from Camp Heal. And so before we get to that Camp Heal stuff, I want to just ask you, Arwen, like what... Can you give me, we don't have all the time in the world, but can you give me like a couple of seminal moments from your sort of mental health journey and what kind of maybe brought you initially to Project Heal?
Yeah, and I really do think it was my mental health journey that brought me to Project Heal. I was raised in a family where, great family, love my parents. But therapy was not something that was discussed. Mental health was not something that was discussed. So as a child, I was an extremely anxious child. And my parents just always chalked it up to being allergic to certain foods. I had stomach aches constantly. And that kind of just followed me into my adulthood. And I found some really unhelping coping mechanisms as I became an adolescent and throughout college and pretty much up until like my early 30s. Just a lot of destructive behavior, a lot of food and body image issues. And I was in a pretty abusive relationship at one point and then just decided that this couldn't be my life anymore. And I moved to Japan. And so moved to Japan, started anew, kind of created my own family, my own group of friends there. And then after that contract was over, I loved the work I was doing at that time. It was with Girl Scouts, but I just felt like there was something missing that, I had learned all these leadership skills, but I just wasn't doing much for myself. And I was seeing a lot of food and body image issues with the leaders and with the families. So I just started Googling food and body image issues, women, leadership. And this magical little organization popped up on the internet called Project Heal. And I read Leanna and Christina's founding story and contacted them immediately and became a volunteer. And so that was how I initially found the organization. It was just trying to find something to kind of, I guess, fill a hole that I couldn't really understand. I would say that I didn't even realize that I had disordered eating until probably 6 months into working with Project Heal. I eventually became a full-time employee with them after volunteering with a year. And then it was just like this whole world opened up where I realized that for pretty much my entire life, I just hadn't recognized some of the things that were holding me back. So I started going to therapy, started just doing a lot of things for myself. And that has been, I think about, my career journey. Girl Scouts taught me how to be a leader, and Project Heal taught me how to love myself.
Wow. That's really powerful. I didn't realize that you sort of found Project Heal at a time when you needed it.
Yeah. And, I think because I have left the organization in very good terms, I feel more comfortable talking about that now. But it definitely was very core to my own journey.
That's amazing. I talked about this with, I don't know, probably everyone else. But the interaction that I've had with Project Heal people and then just the Camp Heal experience, like for me, it felt like I was with my people for the first time. It felt like I had never been around anyone who had struggled with eating disorders or in recovery or recovered. And so being around people like that was just like, oh, like it was a light bulb moment for me. Like it was like, oh, this is really special to be around others who are struggling maybe with the same thing. Did you have that moment as well?
I mean, I think that was my 3.5 years of moments.
Yeah.
was, finding that community. I remember going to my first gala with Project Heal and, it's probably 6 months into the job. And when all this stuff is happening, I'm starting to realize these things, but also have this job to do and, not really comfortable about talking about like, oh my gosh, like I am in this moment of, pretty intense healing and things are being, I'm realizing a lot. But I was at a gala, in my dress, and just thinking about how amazing it was that I knew no one was going to talk about, the food and the calories at the event, or you were never going to hear anyone say, do I look fat in this? Because it's just not accepted in the eating disorder world to talk about things like that. And it was the most reassuring, comfortable feeling. I mean, I feel like every time you go to a Project Heal event, it's just like, just being so comfortable in my skin and knowing that everyone is there with this shared experience, and it's a really safe space.
Yeah.
And so I think, that we saw a lot of that at Camp Heal, but that was a lot of that feeling that went into why we wanted to have Camp Heal is how do we isolate that feeling for more than a couple hours?
Yeah. And so I think the safe space piece of it is really important. It's something I talk about a lot on this podcast and something that I'm working on, in this new sort of project I've been working on. Like I think for me in my own journey, finding the safe space was like, if I didn't find that safe space, I might not be here. Right. And so for you, like when you found that safe space in sort of starting to work and volunteer with Project Heal, what sort of self-care, what sort of things did you start doing to kind of really explore your heart and look inward?
Yeah, I think the first thing that happened was I met supermodel Emmy at one of the first events I attended, and you met Emmy. Emmy
Yes.
was one of the
She was a delight.
fantastic. She's fantastic, and so Emmy was the first kind of body positive person who I met that was like famous. And so, Emmy had talked about these body positive retreats and things like that. And so I knew nothing about the body positive world. So I just started looking it up on Instagram. And that for me was where my real jump into my own self-care started is I just started going to these groups and going to these retreats and going to these yoga groups that were focused around body positivity. And it completely changed the way that I thought about myself. And I just feel like from there, I kind of feel like I've become a force to be reckoned with when it comes to, body positivity, fat positivity. I'm definitely like a baby, activist. I don't know as much as most of the people out there, but I feel like seeing these role models and having them, just open up this world to me, a world where I can belong, was just it was life-changing for me.
Yeah.
And that was my self-care, was just, starting to do stuff, joining unlikely hikers. I talk about them a lot in my own journey. Unlikely Hikers is a group of, it's a diverse hiking group that's led by this amazing woman, Jenny Brusso. And it's a group of people who are typically not represented in the outdoors. So I went to one of those hikes, made a bunch of friends, and then just started continuously doing things with these people that I met. And then it's so crazy. Like when you're talking to people, being from the eating disorder world and working in it, how many people have experienced eating disorders or disordered eating and not known exactly what it is?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of this cross-pollination too, as I followed my own journey into the body positivity world, bringing people back to the eating disorder support world.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. Like I remember in sort of my, I'd, unlike you and unlike I think many, although Laura Burns, who I spoke with, had sort of a similar experience as I, where we didn't have groups, we didn't have sort of centers in treatment or inpatient, outpatient. We didn't have any of that sort of thing. But gosh, I am rambling. I'm so tired. Where did my mind go? What was I going to say? I don't remember what I was going to say. God damn it. What did you just end with? Gosh.
I was talking about the cross-pollination of body positivity and eating disorders, but it could have also just been about joining groups.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I lost it. It's all right. I think it's so special that. So did you not were you starting therapy at that time? Did you ever seek sort of like proper eating disorder treatment, or was it just about
I have never sought eating disorder treatment. The most of that is because, and I would say that I am definitely the exception and not the rule on this. My eating disorder behaviors, and I would say I probably had eating disorder behaviors rather than having an eating disorder. But living in Japan, I stopped doing the things that I was doing that was harmful to my body as much. So for me, therapy has been more about kind of adjusting the mindset about, the triggers to those things, or, approaching the triggers rather than the behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge part of recovery for, I think, many people is being aware of what our bodies need and what nourishes us and what our triggers are, just kind of being mindful of that stuff. And was that hard work to kind of get there, or did it come sort of naturally because you had this safe space?
Well, I think I'm still working on it. And I think that, I'm 39 years old. So, in the ideal world, it would have been a lot easier had I had, therapy and treatment and, support a lot early on. And I think we know, the older you get and the longer you've lived with something, lived with an experience, or, have had, behaviors, it's harder, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that behavior wise, that was pretty, miraculous. And that had a lot to do with me just, deciding that I wasn't going to engage in diet culture. But I think the thought process it's taken a while. It's taken, years. So, but I did start therapy pretty much when I started working for Project Heal. When that little light bulb went off that in my head that, like, you deserve to not have these dark thoughts. You deserve to be happy.
Yeah.
You are a valuable person. And that happened probably, 6 months into working for Project Heal. That's when I started, really doing things for myself, and not just therapy, but, yoga and all of these other, community support type of activities.
That's so great. And isn't it so interesting that sometimes it requires, because I'm someone who struggles with like self-esteem, feeling that I don't deserve anything, love whatsoever, right? But what is so powerful about a group of people who can relate and empathize is you start to be able to let that stuff go, because they're being sort of mirrors for you, right? And they're reflecting who you are, and they're meeting you where you are, and that's just validating, and then you feel loved. And some of the sort of personal stuff, I know that for me has been the case. Some of the personal stuff is sort of lessened or sort of been shed a bit.
I completely agree. I mean, there's no way I would be having this conversation 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And, I'm really comfortable around you, and it is because of that mirroring fact.
Yeah. So tell me about like the initial sort of musings on Camp Heal and how that sort of came to be.
Yeah. So as you know, I worked for Girl Scouts for a decade. So that was both in the United States and abroad. And I hated camp as a kid. Every camp experience I had, I just was not comfortable. Being an anxious kid, having self-esteem issues, like camp's not a great place for sometimes, because there is a lot of, there's a camp sometimes is not cool for the unpopular kid. I guess is the way to put that.
The way that I was thinking about this, and I was talking to my friend Becky yesterday, and going into yesterday, I was like, I've never had a camp experience. And then I was reminded that I did go to this camp called Rawhide Ranch, which is like a horse sort of like camp, but it was like for a couple of days. But that's not the camp that I sort of like associated with, like, river or lakes and sort of crafts and talent shows and things like that. But yeah, like to your point, like the sort of vision of camps that I have had prior to Camp Heal was like essentially taking elementary school and just porting it over to this camp. So the cliques and all that stuff are still there.
Yeah. And so that was, when I came into Girl Scouts, that was an experience I just didn't want to happen because I didn't like that. And so in my, working for Girl Scouts, I loved program, and we developed a lot of really kind of magical and inclusive camps. And one of the aspects in my own program development was making sure that the activities were really centered around a common interest, more than just like spilling everyone over to like the outdoor education camp. Yes, it's the theme is outdoor education, but everyone's kind of just forced to be there. So in Girl Scouts, I did like a lot of like Harry Potter camp, and
amazing.
Then, and so like you have these groups of people, and no matter in school, maybe how people treat each other, because all of these kids were real like big Harry Potter fans. I know it's kind of a silly thing to talk about, but
is it? I think it's the greatest thing ever.
But you saw people connecting that probably weren't connecting outside of that because of those shared interests. So that kind of sparked this thing in my head of like, camp can actually be pretty magical. And so, I've done dozens and dozens of camps. And at the end of like my career with Girl Scouts, we actually brought 17 girls together, and they were from all over the United States, and they climbed Mount Fuji together for a leadership hike. And that was just it was really kind of raw, and they had this shared experience that was really hard together, and it was really emotional, and there was a lot of learning from it. And I was like, there's something really special about this. And I don't really know what this is, but it has something to do with like how they're feeling and not so much about the shared interest. And so I had one last camp, which was in Hiroshima, Japan, and Kaylie Gelati, who was one of the camp co-directors, actually ran that one. And we ran a camp together where people didn't speak the same language, but the camp was amazing. And people, these girls were just completely connected and friends, but they didn't speak the same language as each other. And so that was where I was like, okay, there is something really special about camp. So, fast forward to Project Heal, it was just something that I wanted to do from the beginning because it had become something of just kind of like who I was. Like, even though I didn't like camp as a kid, like I had realized that there was something special in it. There's all these statistics you can look at about like how, camp leaders that work together, like there's like, it's like 90% of them like feel like more valuable. And then, the ACA has a bunch of statistics.
Gotcha.
But, but we didn't know if like doing camp with the demographic of people who have, had eating disorders or have had food and body image issues was going to be something that was popular, if it was a horrible idea. So this was like, 3.5 years in the making. So I am Margaret Burton, who at that time was a Southern California chapter leader, was one of those kids who grew up going to camp, loving camp, leading camp, just like forever a camper and camp counselor. Fantastic woman. So she wanted to join the team. I contacted Kaylie and said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Do you want to, run one more camp with me? And then we put out a survey just to see if anyone was interested, from our social media reach for Project Heal. And in 2 days, we had 500 results.
Oh my goodness.
Survey, which is huge for us. Like normally on surveys, you don't get that many.
Yeah.
So that was, I think that was probably over 2 years ago. And then it just became, we used those results and we just wanted to be really, really careful about it. So we brought in a lot of experts, clinicians. We asked clinicians about specific things. That was why there was such a screening process. So it really came from an idea of like, there's something magical in community. We like camp. Let's try to make this happen. Do people want it? And then what it turned into was not what I expected.
How do you mean?
Well, so when we posted that we had this, the original idea was that this was going to be a Project Heal camp and that we would have a couple of different workshop leaders come in. So it would mostly kind of be Project Heal show with a couple of guest stars. But there was so many people that reached out, like you reached out, that wanted to be part of this. So, I mean, at this camp, we had 30 workshop leaders. And these people, amazing people from all over the, body positive and eating disorder industry, they reached out to us. We weren't, pursuing people. And, for me, I was just like, yes to everyone. So, there were a couple of people that I would say like the majority of people reached out to us. There were a couple of people that we stalked because we knew that we had to have them there. But overall, people just wanted to be part of this. And I think that was part of like what was so great about this camp is that the workshop leaders themselves were kind of like campers. I mean, seeing them just engage together and to go to the sessions, I think that was why this camp was so good, was because they weren't just there to like come do their thing and leave. They were role models and peers at the same time.
Yes. That's how it felt to me. It was like there was no like hierarchy, right? Everyone was, in it together, and we were all like happy to be there and excited to be there and take part in other workshops, and it just felt like a big family.
Yeah, and I loved it. And there was just like moments where, I think being the logistics person, you're not really leading things, but you're just there kind of observing, and just so many moments of just seeing people interact together and seeing so many, consensual hugs. It just was a really warm place.
Yeah. Now, like the part that would, like if I were running a camp, like the part that I would worry about the most is like figuring out the sort of, are people going to be okay and triggered, and like, how do we determine if they're quote unquote healthy enough to be here? And obviously we want to empower them, but like, and make it clear that this isn't treatment. Like how did you, I mean, obviously you sought clinician help, but like any other sort of aspects of that process?
Yeah. I mean, and I think, this was the first year that this happened. We did this camp. So I think that there's always areas of improvement. But what we tried to really make sure was that people were very, very aware that this was not treatment. So, I mean, I think it said it in every single document twice. We also had a self-assessment that actually the Gaudiani Clinic had recommended that we do a self-assessment, which was a great recommendation because before people registered, we had them take the self-assessment. And it was really, are you still engaging in behaviors? Would you be comfortable in this situation? And if you said no on the self-assessment, it was, you weren't really ready to be at this camp. And so I would say that having that self-assessment, because we can see when people were taking it, probably only 1/3 of the people that actually filled out the self-assessment registered for camp.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first way for people to really understand that, okay, this really isn't treatment. And maybe I'm not ready for this yet.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people that we talked to that, because some people, they really wanted to come even though, so, we would refer them to communities of healing and, to other support systems. And maybe, in the future, they would be ready. But, that's more for, we wanted to ensure that everyone was safe there and that everyone that, this was going to be a forward step in recovery and not a forward back. And so, there's a very, there's a line there we didn't want to cross. And then we had a physician's approval for all of the campers so that they had to be, medically stable, as well as we did a video interview with every camper that came to camp. So it might have seemed like a little bit of overkill, but, I actually think that, should this event happen in again, that same process should happen because there were people that were not able to come the first year through that 3-step process.
Yeah.
And, hopefully they'll be able to come in the future, but they might not have had a great experience or they might not have been safe if they had come.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that, you're really, because that's important. And I think it reminds people that like, oh, I need to check in with myself and ask myself those questions. Like, is this going to be right for me now? And that's a huge part of sort of recovery is figuring out like what is safe and what are we ready for. So that's amazing.
Yeah. And I think, should there be a 2.0 version that we could have, not therapy, but someone there to do some help around when people are feeling triggered or when things happen. So I think, in the next version, looking at how we can just do a better job of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a Lucy sort of Peanuts style, like trigger booth.
I love that. And I think it should have looked exactly like that.
Yes, I agree.
People have to pay 5 cents.
5 cents. Yes. Well, I just wanted to say that like, to you as the co-director of Camp Heal, and I know you're not with Project Heal anymore, and but I'm so thankful that I was able to be a part of it, and I feel immense gratitude because it just, like I said, I felt like I was with my people. I felt I'd never been around people in recovery or recovered in eating disorders, and it just felt so good. And my heart was so full and continues to be full, just kind of reminiscing about the experience. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Well, and I wanted to thank you for reaching out and for being just so instrumental in the success of this event. I mean, I think it was, 5 minutes in, I was like known as my people, and you were just so helpful. I think about you and Kara Hardman and Kaylie Buccaro and Patricia Giesemann and Kelly. Like, we would not have been able to pull this off if this group of people was not together this first year. So I just, all of the gratitude in the world to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, I know you're not going to be a part of it, but I do have hopes for Camp Heal 2.0.
Oh, I will be a part of it. They better invite me back.
That's fair. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Project Heal is my family. I might not be, working for them anymore, but if they're going to do Camp Heal 2.0, I would love to volunteer and come back and help.
Yeah, that's true. That's only fair. So Arwen, where can people connect with you? I know, like, if you wanted to talk about your new job or your new sort of side project, passion project thing that you're working on, where can people learn about that stuff, connect with you online, all that?
Yeah. So my new career journey is I will be the executive director of Come Alive Outside starting Monday. And that is an organization that redesigns nature back into people's lives for wellness. So kind of fits with my own journey and kind of the theme of this call today. So comealiveoutside.com is the website for the new organization I'll be leading. And then I also, I have co-founded an extended size hiking apparel company. And if people want to find out more about that, we're going to be doing a lot of retreats and events for that are body positive as well. And that is WNDR Outdoors. So, at WNDR Outdoors on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting. I'm excited for this new chapter in your life. It sounds, you've clearly had a lot of wonderful chapters, and this is going to be another great one.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. And, I think, everything in your life like leads up to that next moment, right? So I feel like this is just the natural progression, but very, very grateful for everything Project Heal has done for me in my own journey and for the opportunities I've had.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being a part of this special episode 100 Camp Heal Bonanza. I don't know why I called it Bonanza, but...
Well, thank you for having me.
We have another Camp Heal friend in the Yumi Empathy verse. It's Errin Witherspoon. Hello, Errin.
Hi, Noan. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I am in Southern California, and you are all the way north in... I forgot. Manitoba?
Yes.
Manitoba.
Well, today it's sunny Manitoba, but we just had a really nasty snowstorm last week already, which was quite early in the season for us, even here in Manitoba. But, Mother Nature gives you what she wants to give you.
We have to respect her and her wishes.
You bet.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this special Camp Heal celebration.
Thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. It was an experience and continues to be.
Yeah, indeed. Well, let's before we get into kind of your Camp Heal experience, tell me a little bit about kind of your journey in sort of getting to camp eventually, and your maybe share a couple of seminal moments, part of your mental health journey, if you want to share your experience with eating disorders, just whatever you want to share. It's great.
Absolutely. I'm an open book, so stop me if I go too long.
Will do.
I started treatment for binge eating disorder year and a half, almost 2 years ago now. And that came about after what I've now discovered was a whole adult lifetime of struggle with eating disorders. And my eating disorder, it did not always manifest as binge eating disorder. It morphed. So there was a period of my life where I struggled with more anorexic behaviors. There was a period where I really struggled with exercise anorexia, some orthorexia, and ultimately now I am in recovery from binge eating disorder. And I came to all of that from, a lot of us have a similar story, and I know that you know this, and probably a lot of your listeners know this as well. But it came out of my own trauma and than a lifetime of just not believing or feeling worth or worthy.
Yeah.
So I was introduced to Camp Heal along my journey because a big part of my recovery has been embracing my creative self. And big probably isn't a big enough word for it. A huge part of my recovery has been embracing my creative self and really getting in touch again with my feminine energies, which I had been ignoring for decades. And there was, I guess, my therapist who first noticed that there was some doodles in my journals. And I had been doodling in my journals because I found it really difficult to express myself in words sometimes, just because it was so painful and raw, and it made everything feel so much more real, putting things down on paper and words, right? So I would doodle, and she noticed a bunch of my doodles in my journal from time to time and had asked if I had bought the journal as it was, like with the art in it. And then, because I often would write over the art. And I said no, that I had been drawing. And so, she kind of just put that in her back pocket, that knowledge. And then, it was a month or two after we discussed my art and what kind of a role that could play in my recovery. She brought it up again when we had been discussing kind of, I guess I was questioning where my life was going to go now from here, because at that point I had completely isolated myself from family and friends. I had isolated myself. Even my career was a home-based business that I ran online. And so I didn't actually have to interact with people. And, in facing some of the challenges and trying to undo some of the isolation that I had knitted myself into, the challenge for me was becoming social again. And so what was that going to look like for me was the big question. What was I going to do with my time now that not as much of my time had been taken up by eating disorder behaviors? And she actually suggested that I consider making a journal for people who are in recovery like myself. So like a creative journal. And I tossed that around for a little while. And eventually I, after talking to some close family members and getting their support and the support of my therapist, I decided, that was something that I wanted to pursue. So I did publish a creative journal, and it was about a year ago now that I started all of that. And then that led me to Camp Heal, because I was trying to figure out a way to make sure that people who are in recovery from eating disorders could find my journal. Mm-hmm. And so I reached out to a couple of awesome feely humans, as you would call them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
And asked them for their help, and they were more than willing to help me. And one of the people that I originally contacted suggested I talk to Arwen Turner from Project Heal. And that's kind of how I ended up connected to Project Heal and going to Camp Heal and doing the workshop and meeting you and all the other amazing people that we met while we were there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. A couple of things that strike me about what you just said. Well, there's the piece of it that I kind of want to explore a little bit is how do you, because I don't consider myself very artistic, but I do and have sort of benefited from kind of the mental and sort of brain emotional sort of benefit of drawing or just doodling like that. I have experienced that, but like, help me understand like exactly like taking your sort of more sort of isolated, disordered eating self and sort of porting that person into creating art. Like how do you like help me understand that transition and like what sort of specifics were a part of that? Like, were you talking to other friends? Were you going to groups, or was it just therapy? And like, how did I guess I'm trying to get to like, how does creating art truly kind of be your therapy and truly be like this crucial piece of your recovery?
Mm-hmm. It came about in a couple of different ways. First of all, I have to give a big shout out to another, a woman that I consider a mentor, who helped me immensely early on in my recovery, and her name is Jessica Flint, and she runs a group called Recovery, or I guess it's a corporation, called Recovery Warriors, and she has a program that I spent 8 weeks taking with her. For people who are in recovery from an eating disorder. And she is the one who introduced me to the idea that the eating disorder behaviors that I had been engaging in were stifling my feminine energy. And the feminine energy is the creative energy. Mm. And so because the eating disorder behaviors are all often so control-centered, control-focused, when you spend all of your time in an eating disorder and that's all you think about, you don't spend any time with the feminine side of you, and you kind of lose your ability to be empathetic towards yourself and to forgive yourself and to explore kind of like the feely emotions, like you know?
Yeah.
And so that in that way, creativity really did enable me to sort of start to work through, and continue to this day, to work through challenging emotions, or difficult times of periods of my life that I had been numbing because it was too difficult to face or to deal with or to think about.
That's so interesting, and it makes so much sense. Did you struggle like initially with that? Because I know that like for many, a certain part of sort of the control of disordered eating is like, you know, you're holding on to sort of the last remnants of the control that you think you have, right? And transitioning that into art, which can be very like freeing and forming. Like, how did you sort of transition that sort of hard, stringent, boxed control to like, okay, I need to kind of allow myself to kind of breathe here a little bit? How did that go?
That it's interesting. If I had you here beside me to show you, I would take out my journals through history and show you what happened and the kind of metamorphosis of my art from the day that I started journaling until today. Because early on, you can even see it, like you mentioned, that stringent kind of holding on to the last thread of control, because that's how you have kind of conditioned your brain to function. I found for me that curved lines, anything flowy or soft, was impossible. That was not something that I thought I was even capable of doing. So my doodles in the beginning were very geometric. It was a lot of just like, you think about like a mandala.
Yeah.
It was a lot of those kinds of patterns. And that again is all making those patterns was a form of control. I was trying to control the creativity.
Wow.
And so if you were to look at my journals over time, you'd see that kind of morphed into what I'm started doing with my creative lettering. That was where, like the workshop that you took with me, that was where I really was starting to, when I learned how to creative letter, was where I really started to learn how to kind of start to just let go a little bit. Because you can't do those kinds of activities with straight lines.
Right. I think there's so much beauty in what you're saying and the relationship to someone with a disordered eating history. Because there's like it's not only the control piece and how that reflects in maybe straight lines, but it's also like the pain and trauma we're holding in our bodies, and it's like we're doing everything to hold it in, and we're tense and our muscles are tense and we're trying to, keep it all together. But that isn't conducive to what you're saying, the beauty of these sort of flowy lines. You have to kind of let go a little bit. And I think that's such a powerful thing. Yeah.
I like to use the imagery of a vice.
Yeah.
So early on, the art, and if you look at it, you can see that it even just looking at it, you feel as though you're constricted just looking at it, and it's stiff and immovable. And then over time, as the vice loosens, and I learn to accept, first of all, that art isn't perfect. And what I think is beautiful is not going to be the same as what somebody else thinks is beautiful. And once you start to accept all of that, that comes out in your art. But then you can also start to train your mind as well, using those same ideas, applying those to yourself.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's a perfect reflection of humanity, really.
Mm-hmm.
We hold on to, what is perfection? There's no such thing, right? And
right.
we each have our own sort of valid ideals and subjectivity and stuff, and that's true in art, and it's true in just relationally and humanity.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned I took your workshop at Camp Heal. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about that workshop and just the experience of doing that?
I have a long history of coaching. I have been a coach since I was in my teens. My first coaching gig was figure skating. I used to teach little teeny tiny adorable humans how to figure skate.
Wow, that is adorable.
They were so cute. And then all throughout my life, as I look at the different careers that I undertook, it was always in a coaching role of some sort, whether that be financial coaching. I was a personal trainer for a while, sports nutrition. And so I know that I had expressed to you that I was a little bit nervous about teaching that workshop at Camp Heal because I had never taught one before. So I had been in a teaching role multiple times, but teaching the workshop at Camp Heal was very different for me. It was coming from a place of deeply rooted emotional connection.
Mm.
And so it was really different. I was much invested in that workshop in a very different way than I ever have been before. And that's, again, I think just because it came from a place of such passion and belief, that I really do believe that if people can find that thing that makes them feel creative and makes them able to let go just a little bit, that it can make a huge difference in their life. And so when I taught that workshop, there was the stress of that. But that stress, it literally melted away like the minute I started talking, because like you so eloquently put when we were talking at camp, the entire experience of camp was like talking into a mirror for 3 days.
Yeah.
And so, I looked at the people who were looking at me as I started teaching my workshop, and it was just like I was talking to myself. It was just suddenly really, really comfortable.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad to hear that you had that experience, because I, of course, had the same, and I loved your workshop. I think it was, it was something that I hadn't done before, and I think a lot of us maybe hadn't done before, and it was fun. It was great, and knowing like your sort of history and it being a part of your own recovery is such a gift that you can give back to people.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I didn't realize you had this coaching background.
Yeah.
It's
always been a part of me.
Yeah. I'm going to pick your brain after we record, because I have a question.
Sure.
And so your Camp Heal experience as a whole, like any highlights, any sort of,
oh my goodness.
Tell me about your experience.
How can you pick one?
I know, right?
It's impossible. I don't think it's something that I will ever be able to replicate. And often I think that it's like that for a first experience with many things.
Right.
So even if I were to go back next year with the same people and try to redo the experience, it would be different, because that first time is always going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest takeaway for me, for sure, was that because where I live geographically, we have one of the one of the most sought after treatment facilities in North America, right in my little town that I live in. I didn't know that it existed until I started wondering whether or not I needed to get some help for the way that the way that I saw my body and my relationship with food. So I didn't know it existed. I found it through my husband's medical insurance. They were the ones who sent me there. And, oh no, I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say, Noan? Oh, my isolation here in Manitoba.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so
you found it.
Here, I found it.
You're not alone.
So I found this treatment center. I started treatment, and then once I felt comfortable enough and confident enough in that I wasn't the only one going through this, I did ask my therapist, are there support groups that I could be using, to connect with people when I'm in between appointments with you? And she said, no, there's absolutely nothing. So there is literally no support here except that treatment center, and it is a private treatment center. So if you're somebody who doesn't have access to medical insurance that will cover the cost of that, it's I shudder to think how you would get help here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been living in recovery in this bubble here on the prairies with my therapist that I'm grateful that I have, and nothing else. So to walk into an environment at Camp Heal where that was the first time that I had been in a group setting with other people who struggle with the same issues that I struggle with.
Yeah.
And so it was overwhelming at times. But the love that was shared so willingly, took care of that overwhelm, like in a heartbeat. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah.
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 It was astonishing.
No, it was. And this whole episode's a big promo for Camp Heal. And as it should be, because I'm so grateful to hear that you had the same experience that I did. And me being not ever having been around people in recovery or recovered myself, it just felt right. Like it felt like I was with the right people,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I came home from Camp Heal, and, that first week I spent a whole lot of time just thinking about the experience and about the people that I had met and the conversations I had had and the perspective of these people that I don't normally get to have conversations with. And it made me realize that this might be what recovery looks like for me. Like I very well could be recovered at this point, and it makes me so happy to say that.
Wow. Because
I hadn't actually stopped to think that this might be, I might be there. Do you know what I mean?
Wow. So being around other people in recovery or recovered gave you some perspective on your own recovery?
Oh, for sure.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Just because it's not like I said, I hadn't ever been in an environment where so many people share so many common ideas and thoughts. And when you're kind of out on the outskirts of what the rest of the people around you believe, it can be, I think, really difficult to consider yourself mentally healthy when everybody else around you doesn't agree with what you believe is, mental health.
Help me understand that. In your sort of isolated place in Manitoba, you have a therapist, you have sort of access to this treatment facility. What do you mean by people not believing?
I think most of the people that I am around, like physically around on a day-to-day basis, they are still so very stuck in, I guess you'd call it diet culture mentality. They still believe all of the lies that I believed while I was steeped in my eating disorder. And so I think when you're seemingly the only one who understands that you don't have to change your body in order to be happy or to be healthy. That it's not like a gold standard to look a certain way.
Yeah.
It's really easy to not allow yourself to think that what you believe and where you are in life is a really well place to be. It's just difficult to accept.
Yeah.
That your difference is okay. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, I do. I think it's why we need people. We need safe spaces. We need people educating each other and relating to each other and being the mirrors, as you said. And yeah, of course. Like, okay, I get it now, and that makes sense. And yeah, I found the same in Camp Heal, and it's such a powerful sort of reminder for me that we do need. I mean, I'm a broken record about this stuff, but we do need to find these safe spaces. We do need to find people and encourage others to create their own safe spaces and encourage others to be vulnerable and to engage in these things. Because, I mean, we're not going to heal, as you pointed out. We're not going to heal in isolation. We're not going to make the world more empathetic or healthier or sort of fighting against the pernicious diet culture alone. We can't do that alone. We have to do it together.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We didn't get to this point alone.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
So it would be, not ideal to think that you could solve it alone. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. The culture here in America has always been there's a fierce independence, right? Mm. And pull yourself up by your bootstraps,
mm-hmm.
That type of thing. And I think there's some, of course, value to that, but I think it's been perverted. It's been to the detriment of actual heart-to-heart connection and learning and learning through connection and learning about what's going on in our hearts. It's just like this, suck it up mentality, which is very damaging.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's almost, in some cases, a competition. Like,
right.
Two people might achieve the same thing, but for some reason, when one achieves it with no help, it's suddenly of more value than the one that achieved it with support. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's arrogant, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing we humans need to do is reduce our egos as much as we can, because by reducing our egos, we can connect and sort of connect with an open heart and an open mind, and not have any sort of preconceived notions about it, and just be open to connecting and learning and finding different perspectives and being curious and
curious. One of my favorite words.
Yeah,
it really is. You can learn so much just from having a little bit of curiosity.
Oh,
and that applies to everything. It applies to learning about other people. It applies to learning about the world we live in. It applies to learning about yourself.
Yeah. I think I do talk about curiosity on this show a lot. And mm-hmm. one time I asked my listeners how would they define depression? And, I think I was struggling with my depression at the time, and my friend Jeff Wag, who actually runs an organization called the College of Curiosity, mm-hmm. Which is amazing. He's amazing. His definition was a lack of curiosity.
That's interesting.
Right?
That's a really simple way to put a very complicated
I know.
Answer.
I mean, I think it's a big part of it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, that sort of his definition will always kind of stick with me, and remind me that curiosity is so important. Yeah. anyways. Well, let's, we're about time. So let's, Errin, where can the listeners sort of, connect with you? Buy your workbook, journal, if they can, all that stuff.
Well, I may be isolated here in Manitoba, but I'm everywhere. No, I am probably the best way to get in touch with me is my website, which is erinwitherspoon.com. And keep in mind, Errin has 2 R's in it. That's ERRIN, witherspoon.com. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, just by name again.
Cool.
No tricks.
Well, I'll make sure to link all that stuff in the show notes. Well, thank you for being a part of this 100th episode celebration, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I've missed having conversations with you. I really, really enjoyed talking with you at camp and getting to know you a little bit.
Oh my gosh. So about me, I'm 31. I identify as genderqueer, and that's a huge part of, I guess, my recovery is really exploring that and coming to terms with all of the I guess, rigidity and shame and rules around identity and how I used an eating disorder to really cope with a lot of that. A lot of my healing has been around identity. And I live in Chicago currently. I'm going to school for a bachelor's degree. I promised myself that I would get one, and it feels so good to get one.
That's great.
Thank you. And yeah, Chicago has been my home for the past year and 2 months. I'm originally from Texas, born and raised South Texan. I love that I'm from Texas. I like to think that I am reclaiming Texas.
I like that.
From the red and saying blue comes from Texas too. Blue and rainbow.
Blue and rainbow. That's right.
And so, it's so hard to begin your story, right?
Let me ask you this, and I appreciate you just kind of starting like that. That's great. So for you, the identity piece of it, help me explore that a little bit. And when did the sort of struggle with your identity start?
Very young, very, very young. I grew up in a very conservative, Republican, Catholic, Latino, Italian, South Texas, rooted Chicano family. A lot of labels are important in my family. And I will say that, growing up, I didn't know that's what it was, but definitely the lens in which I started to view the world and the lens in which my family viewed the world, it had all of those kind of filters on it. And so as I grew up, I became more and more aware of these filters and my family and how we relate to each other and how they see the world, and this pressure to kind of fit in with all of those filters. And I just became very aware at a young age that I was different. I didn't how I acted and what I wanted and how I wanted to connect with people was not normal for them. I was very much like, I want to play with the next door neighbor girls, not the boys, and I want to play with their Barbies and their hair and their makeup, and I want an easy bake oven, and I want a Barbie dream house, and I want a princess themed birthday party. And I think my family was just like, oh my God.
And how old were you when you were wanting these things?
3 and 4. I just remember a lot of no's. I remember feeling really embarrassed all the time. I remember thinking things like, why can't I just be like my brother? Or they like my brother more than me. And I will say there's a lot of power in what is said, but there's also a lot of power in what is not said.
100%.
When you're a very intuitive child, I feel like I'm very empathic. I've always been very intuitive, and you're very aware of other people. And all of that just kind of coupled together with there are things about me that just need to be fixed, changed, or tucked away neatly. And so much of my life was about just desperately trying to fit in and be seen as okay and acceptable, and just all the pain that goes with trying to weigh and measure yourself and cut yourself down to an acceptable size.
Yeah.
When so much of your personality is big and different, and you want to celebrate life and get to know people and connect with people. Like, I find that is my natural personality.
Yeah.
And it was always my personality, especially as a child. I was that fun, charismatic child that just loves running through the house and singing. And I just remember my grandmother saying to me all the time, like, do you have worms? Do I need to take you to the vet? You just can't sit still. And why are you always singing? And in my day, children were seen and not heard. And who told you could have an opinion? And just all kinds of like shame. And there was a lot of physical abuse in my home as well. That's how my parents were raised. That's how their parents were raised. It's very generational. I'm the first in my family to really address mental health. I kind of didn't have a choice. It was that or die from an eating disorder and addiction.
Yeah.
And so in a lot of ways, even in my recovery, I'm even more so a black sheep in my family, and that's okay. Today, I remember when I kind of realized at like 21, I was going into my second treatment center. I remember thinking, like, this is where you go in alone.
How did that feel?
Oh my God, it was, it felt the most validating and the most real and the most emotional I think I've ever been in my life. Because I recognized that nothing in my life was very genuine anyway. And so I was like, well, if all I have is me, at least that's something.
And you were making a choice for yourself, and that's a choice 21, you needed, yeah.
I was 21 years old, 10 years ago. And I recognized that I was in relapse with anorexia and bulimia. I didn't want to be. I was in a lot of pain. I had been out of the closet for 3 years. Coming out of the closet, I think, was huge for me in my recovery. Because, you know, and for those of you who don't know, I will clarify, the eating disorder symptoms are the solution. They were my solution to the pain and the isolation and all of the faulty wiring and belief systems that I had about myself and the world. And in order for all of those things to kind of coexist, I needed a release valve of some kind. And for me, it was the eating disorder and addiction. It was like the numb that I needed to fit in and keep moving.
Yeah.
My favorite thing that someone said is, I got really good at creating the facade, but I lacked the infrastructure.
Yeah, that's well said.
And so I was really good at creating this facade of Eric's okay, Eric's fine, Eric's normal. He's adjusted well. And I had no infrastructure inside of me to navigate life or the reality of what it meant to grow up in a home that was full of addiction and mental illness and secrecy and silence and judgment and all of that stuff. And so the way that it kind of culminated in my life was when I was 18, I hit rock bottom for the first time. There have been many revisits to rock bottom with the eating disorder. I just couldn't hold up the facade one more day. It was too painful. I had no idea that that's what I was even doing. Everything kind of just stopped working. And I was at school and everyone was getting ready to go off to college and, you know, so excited about their acceptance letters and majors and dorms and blah, 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 blah. And I just couldn't hold it together anymore. I was terrified. By that point, I was completely engaging in my eating disorder all day, every day. I would skip class to binge and purge. I would skip school to binge and purge. I was forging doctor's notes and all kinds of crazy to just I just kept hitting avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Because I never learned to talk about what was going on. There wasn't really a language. My eating disorder became my voice. And that's when I decided to ask for help. And I guess that's where my journey kind of really began, was that day in high school, right after English. I just couldn't do it anymore.
Most English classes will do that to you.
There's something about literature that just sparks the imagination.
Yeah. Well, I can I just say that, like, I relate somewhat to your story, you know, kind of going it alone in some respects, but I also just want to say that, like, wow, I mean, to do that, to go and seek help and to, you know, pull yourself up from rock bottom and to be where you are now, like, that's you should be so proud of that. And, like, you've displayed such courage and strength through that process. And yes, we've had ups and downs and ebbs and flows. That's life. But, like, look at where you are now. Like, that's such a beautiful thing you've been able to create for yourself.
Thank you for saying that. You know, I would be lying if I said that's how I felt. I don't. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. It's like hindsight is always 2020.
Mm-hmm.
In so many ways, I feel like something so much bigger than me has just kind of pushed me in this direction versus so much more me pulling myself into this direction. I think innately I've always wanted to live. I've always wanted to survive. I just didn't know how. I didn't know how to. When I hit rock bottom with my eating disorder, it's not that I wanted to die, because those thoughts did cross my mind. Just the pain of not knowing any other way to live, and yet the way that I was living was completely unmanageable, wasn't living at all.
Right.
Those thoughts crossed my mind, but it really boiled down to, I don't know how to live. And I want to so bad. I want to live. I want to find this happiness, this authenticity, this way of being in the world that isn't so conflicting and transactional. And I think that was so much, like, just admitting that invited so much love into my life that I think continues to grow to this day. It's not that my life is perfect. It's very far from perfect, but I definitely think that today I have a lot of gifts that recovery has given me that keep pushing me, not pulling, keep pushing me in this direction.
And I think that's beautifully said. And I want to say that I wasn't necessarily intimating that there's an end point, right? Like, it's,
absolutely. I didn't even take that at all.
Yeah. Well, for the listener's sake, I just wanted to say that, like, for Eric and for you listeners, like, it's a constant journey, and we're always sort of striving for whatever we're striving for. And I think it's important to recognize that there are bumps along the road. There are sort of avenues that we sort of get lost in, and that's okay. Like, that's just part of the way this wild blue wonder works, you know?
Oh man, I think you hit something really key, which is that we do get lost along the way.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of so many points in my little 10-year journey. I would say my recovery really kind of picked up when I re-entered treatment at 21. So 10 years ago, I think, yeah, we get lost along the way, and God, do I need that grace to remind myself that that's still also part of it. Yeah. But I feel like something that really helps me is I remind myself that recovery is a way of life. It's not necessarily like, it's not rules. It's not, I feel like it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
And it should be different for everyone. And yet we kind of all come together and share in it. And I think that for me, recovery is definitely a way of life, and how I choose to engage with life.
Yeah.
There's an openness to it that I try to really remember, just one day at a time, that it's just remain teachable.
Mm.
It's not fixed. I'm not fixed.
Yeah.
And I mean the double meaning of that.
Right.
Like, I'm not fixed as in set in stone, fixated in one place, just as much as like I'm not cured. I'm not fixed. And I don't have to be. Recovery doesn't require that I have it all figured out and that I have an end point in mind. It's just this idea of opening up.
Yeah. I think that's so well said. And I think that that's a frame of mind and being that I feel like, in recovery or not, we should all aim for. Because when we are fixed, we're not growing, we're not learning, we're not having the open heart to kind of find new perspectives and be open to new experiences and to go see a drag show, for instance. Like,
oh my God,
being in a fixed state isn't conducive to the human condition in my experience. I was just going to say this, Eric, like, hearing you talk about your story and thinking about it in terms of just where you are now at 31, think about this, like, for 20 years, you were sort of battling this identity and putting up this identity that wasn't you, right? Mm-hmm. And you've only been at this new, like, your real self now, sort of exploring that for 10 years, so, like, I think that's another point of, like, giving yourself kindness to say, like, look, like, you battled, you fought the fuck out of that identity for 20 years, and that's no longer you. And now you're sort of exploring this new you, this core you, and you've only been at it for 10 years. And that type of stuff takes a lifetime.
Amen. Thank you. Yes. Like, and even then, I think for me, recovery has been an exploration of grieving a lot of things.
Yeah.
For a long time, I think, and I'm just speaking for myself. For a long time, it was really easy for me to intellectualize recovery. Like, okay, I get it. I see it. I understand. And then there came this point in my recovery where I was like, oh my God, I'm like here. So much of my eating disorder was about avoiding my body and my nervous system and my emotions and the pain of having to occupy my identity in my body and the realness of all of that. Because something I personally believe is that human beings who suffer from addiction and eating disorders have a very acute sense of intimacy, are very aware of intimacy, and it can be very overwhelming. And when that intimacy is met with very invalidating and traumatic experiences, it almost forces you out of your body. And I've experienced that just for myself. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And so much of my recovery has been about stepping back into my body physically and spiritually and the relationship with all of that. And a lot of it has been this awakening. It's like when I entered recovery for my eating disorder, it's like I agreed to wake up. And then the next few years, I just kept hitting snooze. It's like, I'm awake, but I don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Let me try some drugs. Let me try some alcohol. Let me try some shopping in Amazon. And then finally it was like, oh my God, I need to really acknowledge me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that shift had a lot of grieving to it.
Yeah, I think that's a really insightful perspective. I do think that any level of facing ourselves, any level of growth, any level of Yeah, I guess just growth is a simple way to put it. Is a grieving process because you're letting go of past, past scaffolding, past frameworks of living, past sort of the beliefs that we were raised in as Christians or Catholics, whatever. Like it's all sort of a shedding of the pieces of identity that we sort of built up through no power of our own, in a way, because we're raised in an environment that is, putting that on us, right? Or like I'm not speaking for all of us, but that was certainly my case in some respects. And like I know for me, like leaving and coming to terms with the fact that I didn't necessarily believe in a Judeo-Christian God, like that was a grieving process for me, right? And that's.
Anytime I think you're willing to acknowledge, okay, something needs to change. In order for something to change, it means something has to turn over, evolve, let go of.
Mm-hmm.
For me specifically, it was like, if I'm going to stay in recovery, I have to stop wishing that I was straight, wishing that I was different, accepting the rejection and of my family and my community, in order to be on my own team, to be on my own side. And then, and even then, like forgiving myself for what I put myself through, and not being mad at that part of myself anymore, and not being afraid of that part of myself anymore, but instead being able to acknowledge it and integrate it into who I am and say, I understand why you did that and I love you.
Yeah.
And that has been that's where I feel like so much of my recovery has been centered on the growth I needed to go through to get to that point, to stop hating that part of myself that was sick, and to also own it. It's like I had to go back to that place. And I'm just speaking for myself. I had to go back to that place when I was 12 and 13 and like in so much fear, and say, I'm going to revisit this place, but this time I'm not going to hit numb. I'm going to feel these feelings instead. And on the other side of that pain is my freedom and my wisdom and my authenticity. And I couldn't do that on my own. I needed a recovery community to anchor me in reality so I could go back to that place and free myself from it. Brene Brown talks about, we go into the swampland of shame to walk through it, not to make a home there. And so much of my shame was wrapped up in my identity as a gay person, my identity as an effeminate male, my identity as someone who is a survivor of abuse, and not having to apologize, to do anything with it. Just say, you know what, this is who I am, and now guess what? I get to move forward. And for me, when I went to the camp this year, oh my God, it was like I had no idea I even needed that experience. And I think a big part of that is so much of recovery kind of does happen in isolation. You come in so isolated by your disease. It's not like I didn't come in ready to make friends and write Valentine's Day cards. Right, I came in, ready to, I don't know what, I guess fight a war. It felt like in a lot of ways, do battle. I came in so armored and loaded, and then, you see an individual therapist and you see an individual dietitian. And for a lot of people, the idea of going to treatment is such a luxury.
Yeah.
I feel like we still have so much to grow in that respect of really what it means to advocate for mental health. It's a luxury.
Yeah.
And so that I feel like I came in craving community, especially being a male in recovery, and like getting to meet you was so amazing. but just there was something very, 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 very powerful about each and every single one of us not knowing each other on a superficial level, but acknowledging and knowing that we had each gone to a very sacred place with ourselves. And that's what brought us to that place at that specific point in time. And we were just, I think everybody was so open to share and communicate in very real ways that you normally don't get to do in the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday bump and grind of life.
Yeah.
And there was just something about getting to stay in that place with each other all day and to celebrate that unique perspective of life for more than just an hour or over a cup of coffee, but like to share meals together and groups together and walks together and space together in that space that was very sacred and very real to each of us was very powerful. I know I felt it, and it was so validating, and it just fed a part of my soul that I don't get to feed all the time. And it was really good for me.
Yeah, it's so good to hear. I mean, I had the same experience. Like I've been sort of ruminating on it for the last few weeks, just thinking about, having never experienced something like that before. You speak of isolation. Like I had never interacted with anyone else ever who's in recovery or recovered from eating disorder. Like that, and so sort of meeting you and meeting so many lovely people in this space that you're right. Like it was a sacred space, and we have this understanding that we've all been there, and there's that, it's like a built-in empathy, and it was such a beautifully connecting experience. And I'm so happy that you had that same experience.
Me too. I mean, meeting you and all the girls in our cabin, it was so nice. I mean, for me specifically, I had this moment where, I was at the top of the hill where all the cabins were, and it was morning time, and there was the giant soccer field with the cross overlooking the mountains. And I remember looking at the cross going, oh my God, the role you played in my past, honey. And then just seeing all of this nature and all of these, knowing that all of these beautiful people were in this with me, it was like how many times I sat alone looking up at the sky, wondering, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel so alone? What is this eating disorder? Why can't I stop? I want so badly to see the colors, and I want so badly to be in my body, and yet for whatever reason I can't, and I don't understand just that loneliness in my disorder, and how completely opposite that moment at camp felt. It was like reaching back into my past, saying like, and you are here today, and just acknowledging like my own journey to that moment. And I can only imagine everyone else's.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a very painful experience in my life. My eating disorder was a very real hell. And all I can say is doing the next right thing. And sometimes finding the next right thing simply means don't do the next wrong thing. And I don't know what to do next. Well, sometimes it was just like, well, then don't do anything. And somehow all of that strung together to, I'm here right now. And I just feel I felt so seen and so validated. And it just was really beautiful. It was a really great experience.
I'm so grateful to hear that. Before we go, so one of the highlights for me of Camp Heal was experiencing the talent show at the end of the last night, and I was just blown away by the talent of all of these campers, the singing, the dancing, just the acting. Someone did a Shakespeare dialogue, and then you.
Oh my God, she murdered Shakespeare.
She did. And then you came on the stage and did a show for us. Can you describe that experience a little bit?
I will. And kind of, talking to tie it all back to the journey of identity and how identity for me is very synonymous with my recovery. It was very vulnerable. So I'm a drag queen, and drag is a gift that I've discovered through my healing process of recovery, and I love drag. Sometimes that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And it was just such an amazing experience to get to share that with people. And I think what was so magical about that experience for me is that above and beyond identifying as an LGBTQ person, I think for me, being in recovery is the most sacred and the most important identity that I have, because it is absolutely the foundation for everything else in my life. And I've never gotten to share my discovery, which is my identity as the boy underneath all of the makeup and the costume, with people who also shared with me like my most sacred identity, which is being in recovery and the gift of that. And so it was almost like this merging of two worlds that came together in such a very beautiful and raw way. And it was like this boy that wanted to play dress up, that wanted to play with Barbie dolls, that wanted a princess party, that wanted to play with an easy bake oven that I had spent so much of my life being afraid of and running away from. It's like, that's what's underneath the drag queen. And as much as like people see the makeup and the hair and the sparkly outfits, there's still a human under there. And I had to find that human that is me. And just getting to bring all of me to the stage in a way that I haven't before was just such a healing and really beautiful experience. And it was very nerve-wracking because I didn't realize that's what was happening, but that's kind of what happened for me. There was no big stage lights. There was no huge sound system. It was like all of that was kind of stripped away because we were just in the bottom floor of this food hall. And it was literally music coming from my cell phone. And I had never done drag in that way. It was simply about me being a drag queen and not so much a performance. And I felt so celebrated for that. And it was awesome.
It was awesome. I'm hearing you say it. I have goosebumps. And then that night I had goosebumps because it was, I felt the same for you. Like I felt that it was important to be out there and it was a safe space. And I felt just the encouragement and support of everyone in that audience. It was so beautiful.
It was like the biggest gift. And I felt like, it was a gift that I received from you all. And it was a gift that I had to allow myself to receive because so much of my life was about having to explain who I am or feeling like I have to defend who I am. And not even realizing but when I set foot on that little stage in the food hall, first floor of the food hall, it was like for the first time I felt like all of me was there. And I mean that, like, because so often there's always that moment when I'm putting on my makeup. And I have to thank you for this in your group, that if you knew me, you knew that I struggled with, or I forget exactly. I think that's how you put it.
If you knew me, you would know that.
If you knew me, you would know that as much as I love doing drag and as much as I have loved who I've become because of it, there's still always this moment when I'm putting on my makeup that this little boy comes up and goes, should you be doing this? And I have to love that little boy. And realize that there's other little boys out there who are going through that exact same thing, even still to this day. And I'm like, yes, absolutely, you get to do this. And I've never felt that more than just being in that little room with everybody in the middle of the woods. Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, you are an inspiration, Eric, and so very eloquent, and I'm just so proud of you. And I would love to do like a full Monday episode of the podcast with you if you're open to it sometime.
Yes. Oh my God.
I want to get into the whole story and all of it. So
okay.
Let's set that up.
Okay.
Where where can people connect with you? And if I have any listeners in the Chicago area, where can they go see you in drag and all that stuff?
Oh, absolutely. So you can connect with me through social media. I'm very big in Instagram. I think that's like my primary social media, and my handle is at FK drag. F is in Frank, K is in kite. That's my drag initials. And you can see me. I perform the first Sunday of every month at Octavio in Andersonville at their drag brunch. So I'll be there November 10th if you're in the area.
Awesome. And you are Fonda Cox.
I am. I just didn't know how PG-13 your show was.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
All languages matter. And you know, some people are fond of Cox and some are not. So, and that's okay.
Fonda Cox, FK Drag. Find me on Instagram. And I look forward to getting to speak with you again.
Well, thank you, Eric, for being a part of this. And to you listeners, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's you, me, empathy.
La, la, la.